A Cataclysm survey has been floating around recently asking players their preferences when it comes to WoW Classic and possible Cataclysm future launch. And with that, it would be appropriate to think back and compare the Wrath of the Lich King and Cataclysm expansions. Would you rather keep playing on Wrath of the Lich King for a few more years, possibly play on some kind of Season of Mastery servers, or would you rather continue on a new expansion, Cataclysm to be exact, with your old characters you've been playing on classic servers until now? This is primarily my opinion. It comes out of me starting my WoW journey back in 2013 on a Wrath of the Lich King private server, and then moving on to Cataclysm a year after, still on the same server, yes it was Twinstar, where I'd been playing Cataclysm for over 8 years, more or less actively. And as you know, since the beginning of this year, 2022, I've been getting back into Wrath of the Lich King, first in Warmane and now playing on both Warmane and Wrath of the Lich King Classic. So my experience will definitely not be that of a Cataclysm player and how they would remember it from the 2010s, but I have a rich history in playing both of the expansions in question. I would also like to hear your opinions and discuss in the comments why you would or wouldn't like to see Cataclysm Classic. The survey's been asking players also about possible changes to the game, so there's a big chance it wouldn't be the Cataclysm we know from back in the day or from the private servers. There would almost certainly be smaller or bigger changes to the game, just like we see on Wrath of the Lich King Classic these days. Me personally, I'm a big fan of the Cataclysm expansion, and I would like for it to be the same as it originally was. I would be fine with the LFR not being in the game. I have actually never experienced looking for a raid feature on Cataclysm, because none of the private Cata servers had it anyway. And I would welcome a collections tab and for mounts and titles to be count-wide, and an heirloom tab just like we have on retail. Also, boosting experience gains for battlegrounds would be amazing. It would be a very refreshing way of leveling, and it was the primary reason why I was still able to level a character on every new Twinstar's Apollo Fresh Realm, and there were many of them. These are probably the changes I would be okay with, and even welcome them on a possible Cataclysm Classic. But most quality of life features, even just having the mount tab outside of the character pet tab, as it is on Wrath of the Lich King, will be a good enough addition. What changes I definitely don't want to see are changes to the core systems such as reforging. I think removing or changing reforging would be too big of a change to the game itself, and it would no longer feel like Cataclysm. Essentially, most of the Cataclysm videos from the Swifties and Cobrax of the world would not be just outdated, but wouldn't even count for Cata Classic that way. And what I would hate to see are any changes to class talents, spells, or abilities. In my opinions, the class design on Cataclysm was one of the best ever. The way the classes play on Cata was amazing. There was still a wide variety of spells you could use, unlike on Legion or BFA, where you were heavily restricted to fewer spells on your action bars. And yet you didn't have the kind of spells like on Wrath of the Lich King, spells that you would never ever use under any circumstances with some specs. There was also no need to carry a bunch of soul stones or other reagents for classes like paladins or druids on Cataclysm, which is another huge change for the better coming from Wrath to Cata. Of course, there were some literally unplayable specs on Cataclysm, both in PvE and PvP. For instance, Demonology Warlocks and Destruction Warlocks were just awful PvP specs that nobody wanted in their arena or battleground group. If you didn't run the Affliction spec as a Warlock, you were just wasting your potential in PvP. Fury Warriors in PvE were useless too, so this time it's not Fury for PvE and Arms for PvP anymore. It's just Arms for both, and Fury is just a meme spec. Don't get me wrong, there are exceptional players passionate about Fury that are able to hit some solid 2200 rating with a spec, but why would you play a spec that is capped at 2200 if you can play a spec that has the potential of being among the top ranks in Arena? The tank specs are also no longer viable in PvP. Outside of some flag carrying, but even then, Ferals are the best for their mobility, and only Blood DKs are kind of competitive in that environment due to their survivability and incredible self-healing. While you would see Prot Warriors, Prot Paladins, and even Preg Paladins in Arena being highly competitive on Wrath of the Lich King, You wouldn't see a single person with half decent rating playing any of these specs on Cataclysm. It is a shame, but again, changing the class design and making these classes viable could break the entire game. Of course, we will be getting the 2 new races with Cataclysm, Worgen and Goblins. A nice addition to the game. I always like to see new race and customization options. Except Volpera. Who wouldn't want to be a werewolf or have an extra mobility cooldown and be able to jump like a goblin? Leveling on Cataclysm is a breeze. It is so much easier to level on Cata compared to Wrath. It's not even funny. Really, any beginner player will have no issues pulling multiple mobs at almost any level and killing them with ease. While on Wrath, you were lucky if you could kill one mob and have enough mana to pull one more afterwards. Cataclysm became very beginner player friendly. PvE was great. A lot of PvE content including multiple raids and dungeons with every patch on Cataclysm. A bit too difficult at times, I agree, but still a lot of fun. And even Dragon Soul as a raid, in my opinion, was really fun and extremely innovative. Like, what other time would you fight on the back of a flying dragon? Come on. The class balance in PvE wasn't the best. You had Blood Death Knights who were the best tank spec by a mile, and then there were the rest of the tank specs. The meta is set after the 12 years, so there are classes and specs that will be invited into the raids, and there are some other specs that just suck and have no chance of being invited at all, unfortunately. Although some people keep saying Cata PvP was the most balanced, I would disagree. Those are the people that played it for some 12 months when people had no idea about what classes are busted, and people actually played the awful specs like Fury Warriors, Destro Locks, or Survival Hunters in PvP. Times change, meta changes, people got way better at playing the game over the time, and that's why on privates, all you see are casters since Firelands with the legendary staff, also casters on the Cataclysmic season with the OP Dragon Soul trinkets, and rogues. Rogues everywhere. With the legendary daggers and bonelink trinkets, there's rarely an arena composition without a rogue in the team. I would agree that PvP was balanced during the first patch, on Vicious Season, but not after that. All you see on Cata in arena for the most part are just marksmanship hunters, ferals, subtlety rogues, red paladins, and a few DKs. Ellie shamans, affliction warlocks, fire mages, and boomkins in battlegrounds, and holy paladins and resto shamans as healers. Obviously, this will happen with any classic expansion. The meta has developed over the years, and most players will play the spec that performs the best. It's the same with Wrath of the Lich King Classic. You also get a more balanced PvP in the earlier seasons, and then we'll only see Shadowmourne warriors dominating the arena towards the end. Talking about PvP, I have to mention Tol Barad, my favoritist PvP zone of all time. Sorry Asmongold, you are wrong. Finally a place in the whole of Azeroth where you can get to play some world PvP. It is not common to bump into people in the open world anymore, and Tol Barad gave us a chance to relive the vanilla world PvP times in a way. In addition, you have some daily quests and Tol Barad fights around every 3 hours where you can farm honor points. The quests are not as amazing, I can see why people wouldn't like that part, but again, some of my favorite times on Cataclysm were doing world PvP on Tol Barad. It is an option for PvP players to all concentrate in one zone and have a chance to fight one another, an equivalent to Wintergrasp for Wrath of Lich King. And this format, unfortunately, we haven't really seen since on any other expansion. Maybe except Ashran on Warlords of Draenor, which was a failure. One of the downfalls of Cataclysm is the lore. After the well-known and loved characters from Warcraft 3 being the big villains in both TBC and Wrath of Lich King, Illidan and Arthas, probably the two biggest and most loved characters of Warcraft franchise ever, we get a villain that most people besides those that had been reading the books didn't really know much about. I remember when they first announced Cata, some 13 years ago, I was like, what the fuck? Dragons? I don't want some lame dragon expansion. I want my Illidan and Arthas back, and the rest of the Warcraft 3 crew. I truly believe that more than anything else in the game, The lore was one of the big reasons people didn't really care. Why would they care about killing some dragons they had never heard about? And I think many people would vote for Cata Classic to not come out even if they never even tried it, just because of the bad stigma there is about the expansion and because of what they keep hearing from influencers. Cataclysm was the expansion when the player numbers started going down, and so on. But I really don't think that the game itself and how it was played would be the primary reason. Times change and some people also want to do different things. Many hardcore players that had been playing World of Warcraft and Warcraft for over a decade were getting employed, no longer had the kind of time for gaming, so there are other factors like that we need to consider. Now the question on everybody's mind, especially on Blizzard's mind, will Cataclysm Classic be as popular as Wrath of the Lich King Classic? No. Comparing the release numbers, I don't think Cataclysm stands a chance. For a reference, we can just look at how well private servers with those two expansions did, and there we will see that there are huge Wrath of the Lich King private servers like Warmain, WoW Circle, but also many smaller ones, while there aren't any Cataclysm private servers that will keep above 2k population at best. I have a few videos visiting and reviewing the current Cataclysm private servers in 2022 and the options where you could play the expansion for free even now. But the popularity of Cataclysm is nowhere near that of Lich King, and that's okay. I still believe it would be a good decision for Blizzard to release Cataclysm. It would still attract enough people for it to be a wise move. Wrath of the Lich King is just in another universe, popularity-wise, compared to most other WoW expansions. So, when would Cataclysm Classic release if it was about to launch after Wrath of the Lich King Classic? Most likely towards the end of next year, fall or winter 2023, since the patch cycle for Wrath of the Lich King Classic will most likely be around 12 to 15 months, and TBC Classic also took something over a year. The good news is, even if Cata Classic would not be officially announced yet, I'm pretty sure that by the time ICC comes out on Wrath of the Lich King Classic, we will be getting a bunch of new Cataclysm private servers to play on that will use the hype around a possible new Classic expansion to their advantage. Do you think Twinstar will release Mists of Pandaria before then? I don't think so. I really think Cataclysm was one of the best WoW expansions. If it still drives me back after playing it for so many years, that alone stands for something. I hope and I think Cataclysm Classic will come out, although to be honest, I would be fine even playing Wrath of the Lich King for a few years. I really like the expansion. So for me, no matter what happens and what way Blizzard decides to go with the Classic servers, I intend on playing it alongside private servers, whether it's Wrath of the Lich King Classic, Cataclysm Classic, or even Mists of Pandaria Classic. Let me know what you guys think, what do you expect to happen with the Classic servers, and what would you like to see Blizzard do in the future?